Good morning, students. I hope you're doing well and I hope you had a really good weekend. We are really coming towards the end of the semester year, and I hope you feel like you've learned a lot. I hope that you continue to see that you're growing and developing as a writer and a researcher. And so we are coming into one of my favorite parts of the semester, and that is our problem solution essay. And you spent the weekend outlining and starting to gather your sources. And I want to tell you, I'm going to extend that deadline until tomorrow night at 11:59 p.m. A lot of you had a lot of questions and you were struggling. Some of you are meeting with me today. And so I think it's best if we do extend that deadline. So I'm going to type that right up here. Your outline deadline is going to be extended until Tuesday, April 5th at 11:59 p.m. So I hope that helps some of you as you begin to flesh out some of these ideas. And perhaps this video will even help you as well. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the thesis statement. The thesis statement, you guys, should address a problem and a solution. It should not simply share the problem that's going on, and it shouldn't only address the solution either. It's really a twofold thesis statement. So by the time I complete your introduction, it should be very apparent to me that you are going to argue a problem and then you are going to flesh out a viable solution. One thing that I do want to address is you want to be really careful about your focus and make sure that it is narrow. There are some problems that are very widespread. Ideas like racial inequality are very widespread. Women's rights are very widespread. Issues in education are very widespread. So what I want you to do is I really want you to focus on a more narrow issue and a narrow solution. Please know that by the end of your essay, you may not be able to tackle the issue holistically. When we talk about women's rights and feminism, there are probably 30 different issues that we could talk about, everything from medical care to pay to places in Supreme Courts to ability to move up in companies that are predominantly male. There are 100 different ways that we could cut that pie, if you will. So what I want you to do is I want you to focus on one issue and some of those bigger issues. So maybe your problem is completely focused on salaries, okay, women's salaries. That's something that you could very narrowly tackle and prove as a problem, and then find a narrow solution. When we talk about the solution, I also want you to remember that solution component, it needs to be narrow as well. You don't want to have 10 different solutions. You want to find one solution and really give yourself the time to unpack it. Really give yourself the time to address what has been done before and what doesn't work. That's only going to strengthen your argument, and make sure that it's something that's clear and tangible. I'm also going to walk through an example with you today, but before I do that, I want to talk about this idea of transitions. Some of you are struggling with, well, how do I address a problem and then go to a solution? How is that going to look organized? So once you, the first half of your paper, you're going to be proving to me that this problem exists, right? So after you've written this constructive, argumentative first part of your paper, and remember, in the first essay that we did, that's what you were doing. You were taking an argument, and paragraph by paragraph, you were proving what makes the great leader. All you're going to be doing is transitioning that to this essay and proving to me that this is the problem through body paragraphs. And then when you transition to your solution, take a look at some of these. While this is an overwhelming problem, there is an alternative solution. There have been solutions in the past. It is time to try and facilitate a different strategy. Guys, these are three key ways that you can really unpack that solution component. These are 3 ways that you're cueing to the reader that you are now leaving the problem. You have proved it. You're finished with that component and you're moving into this solution portion. So if you have any questions about how to transition, or that's something you want to talk about further, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now, I'm going to share with you, this is actually from an English 111 book, but it's a really good example of what a problem solution essay would look like. And so I'm going to widen this a little bit. Oh, I think it just clicked off of it. But I'm going to share this with you today as kind of a way to just show you the organization, show you what the introduction should look like. I think it's going to be a really good way for you to kind of grab a hold of what this essay should be. So this is by Wilbert Rodeau, and guys, this is a really intense essay, actually about a social issue. So before we get started, I want to ask you some of these questions. What problem does the writer identify, and does the writer rouse you to want to do something about the problem? What solution does the writer propose, and what evidence supports the solution? Does the writer convince you to agree with the solution? And how is the writer qualified to write on this subject? So I want you to think about those things as we begin to unpack this particular essay. So the title is really creative: Why Prisons Don't Work. Immediately, you kind of know where he's going to come from for this particular social issue. I was among 31 murderers sent to the Louisiana State Penitentiary in 1962 to be executed or imprisoned for life. We weren't much different from those we found here or those who had preceded us. We were unskilled, impulsive, and uneducated misfits, mostly Black, who had done dumb, impulsive things, failures, rejects from the larger society. Now, a generation has come of age and gone since I've been here, and everything is much as I found it. The faces of the prisoners are different, but behind them are the same impulsive, uneducated, unskilled minds that made dumb, impulsive choices that got them into more trouble than they ever thought existed. The vast majority of us are consigned to suffer and die here, so politicians can sell the illusion that permanently exiling people to prison will make society safe. Guys, what he's done here is he has given you this really intense and reels you in with this heart-wrenching introduction. We see that he has a lot of ground to stand on. His experience comes through here. That's not necessarily something I would suggest for an academic essay, but what I do want you to see is that he grabs the reader's attention. There is no way that you can steer away from what he's talking about here. While he does not come out and explicitly state the solution, he alludes to the fact that he is going to provide one because he is so clear about this problem. Getting tough has always been a silver bullet, a quick fix for the crime and violence that society fears. Each year in Louisiana, where excess is a way of life, lawmakers have tried to outdo each other in legislating harsher mandatory penalties and in reducing avenues of release. The only thing to do with criminals, they say, is to get tougher. They have in the process the purpose of prison began to change. The state boasts one of the highest lockup rates in the country, imposes the most severe penalties in the nation, and vies to execute more criminal per capita than anywhere else. The state is so tough that last year, when prison authorities here wanted to punish an inmate in solitary confinement for an infraction, the most they could inflict on him was to deprive him of his underwear. It was all he had left. What we see is this entire paragraph, which is proving the problem exists, is about this concept of getting tough. It's about the harshness and the cruelty of this purpose of prison, which is getting tougher, for the state to get tougher. If getting tough resulted in public safety. Louisiana citizens would be among the safest in the nation. They're not. Louisiana has the highest murder rate among state prisons. Okay, we see again another topic to prove this problem exists. Prison, like the police and courts, has a minimal impact on crime because it's a response after the fact, a mop up operation. It doesn't work. The idea of punishing the few to deter the many is counterfeit because potential criminals either think they're not going to get caught, or they're so emotionally desperate or psychologically distressed that they don't care about the consequences of their actions. The threatened punishment, regardless of its severity, is never a factor in the equation. But society, like the incorrigible criminals it abhors, is unable to learn from its mistakes. So again, we see this other paragraph that is addressing the problem again, which is talking about this is not making a safe environment. It's not solving the issue. So then we see that he shifts to the proposed solution. Prison has a role in public safety, but it is not a cure-all. So he's addressing what's been done and saying it's not working. Its value is limited, and it should also be limited to what it does best, isolating young criminals long enough to give them a chance to grow up and get a grip on their impulses. It is a traumatic experience, certainly, but it should be only a temporary one, not a way of life. Prisoners kept too long tend to embrace the criminal culture, its distorted values and beliefs. They have little choice. Prison is their life. There are some prisoners who cannot be returned to society: serial killers, serial rapists, professional hitmen, and the like. But the monsters who need to die in prison are rare exceptions in the criminal landscape. So what we see is he's taken this paragraph and saying prison should only be temporary. It is not a cure-all. Crime is a young man's game. Most of the nation's random violence is committed by young urban terrorists. But because of long mandated sentences, most prisoners here are much older, have spent 15, 20, 30 years behind bars, long past necessity rather than pay for new prisons. Society would be well served by releasing its older prisoners who pose no threat and using the money to catch young street thugs. Warden John Whitley agrees that many older prisoners could have been freed tomorrow with little or no danger to society. Release, however, is governed by the law or by politicians, not penal professionals. Even murderers, most of those feared by society, pose little risk. Historically, for example, the domestic staff at Louisiana Governor's Mansion has been made up of murderers, handpicked to work, and the chief of state and his family, penologists, have long known that murder is always a once in a lifetime act. The most dangerous criminal is the one who is not yet killed but has a history of escalating offenses. He's the one to watch. So again, we see another paragraph that proposes the solution of returning older threats to society, okay, to releasing your older people who are imprisoned. Rehabilitation can work. Everyone changes in time. So again, he's saying rehab is an answer here. The trick is to influence the direction that change takes. The problem with prisons is they don't do more to rehabilitate those confined in them. The convict who enters prison will probably leave the same way. And most convicts want to be better than they are, but education is not a priority. The prison houses 4,600 men and offers academic training to 240, vocational training to a like number. Perhaps it doesn't matter. About 90% of the men here never leave this prison alive. The only effective way, and we're coming into the solution, the only effective way to curb crime is for society to work to prevent the criminal act in the first place, to come between the perpetuator and the crime. Our youngsters must be taught to respect humanity of others and to handle disputes without violence. It is essential to educate and equip them with the skills to pursue their life and ambitions in a meaningful way. As a community, we must address the diverse life circumstances that spawn criminality. These things are not quick and they're not easy, but they're effective. Politicians think it's too hard a sell. They want to be on record for doing something now, something that can point them into a re-election time. So the dumb beat goes to more police, more prisons, more of the same failed policies. Ever see a dog chase its tail? So again, we see him reintroduce this idea that this is a problem, it's not being fixed, and it needs a solution. Guys, I really hope that that was beneficial for you to kind of see the layout and see how he really scaled this problem. The only difference for you all is that you're going to be using research, right? You're going to be proving these ideas with secondary resources, just as you did in your last paper. The paragraph formation and the principles that you learned in the last unit are no different than what you're applying this time. I'm really looking forward to reading your introduction and your one problem paragraph, your one solution paragraph, and your conclusion as we work together over the next 3 weeks. If you have any questions as you're getting the feedback on your outline, or if you just need further guidance and want to talk about your paper, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and let's finish really strong here on our final essay.